Hello, it's great to be with you today, albeit virtually, for this year's Innovation Summit. As you all know, the importance of innovation has been paramount in fighting COVID-19 and mitigating its impact on our economy. That's why business resource partners like the New Hampshire Tech Alliance and the services they provide are so valuable for small businesses looking to grow. From supporting startups and early-stage companies to offering mentorship services, the New Hampshire Tech Alliance provides valuable resources small businesses need to succeed. In fact, the success of the Alliance is evident by the caliber of innovative leaders you'll hear from during this conference. I want to specifically acknowledge the panelists today, all of whom have demonstrated through their success that New Hampshire is an excellent environment for entrepreneurship and innovation. Rajesh Nair is founder of EnCube Labs, providing training resources for entrepreneurs. Jody Holt is co-founder and CEO of Kincern, which helps families manage financial caregiving. And Bob Wilkins is CEO of SoClean, which designs and manufactures air purification systems, among other products that we know are so critical in the fight against COVID-19. Small businesses are indeed the lifeblood of our state. They employ over 50% of our workforce and create 16 times more patents than large businesses. I am thrilled to be here today to celebrate these Granite State entrepreneurs on their successes. As a former small business owner and a senior member of the Senate Small Business Committee, understanding the struggles and finding common sense solutions to challenges facing our small business community are personal priorities for me. I'll continue to do everything I can to help our small businesses as we fight to end this pandemic. Again, congratulations to the panelists, to all of you for your accomplishments, and special congratulations to the Entrepreneur of the Year. I wish you all success as we work together to strengthen and grow New Hampshire's tech economy.
Welcome to Day 3 of the New Hampshire Tech Alliance's Innovation Summit. If you missed the first 2 days, head on over to the NH Tech Alliance's YouTube channel to see what you missed. Today, we'll have a fireside chat with 3 past Entrepreneur of the Year recipients. Today's event is sponsored by Cook, Little, Rosenblatt, and Manson. Cook Little has extensive experience working with startup companies on the unique challenges and business issues they face. We would like to extend our appreciation to Cook Little for their sponsorship of this event. Make sure to tune in Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern for a live-streamed event featuring a startup showcase and the presentation of the 2021 Entrepreneur of the Year Award as we wrap up the 2021 Innovation Summit. I hope you've enjoyed the programming so far. If you'd like to learn more about the New Hampshire Tech Alliance, please visit nhtechalliance.org. Next, we'll hear a short message from Cook Little. Then you'll meet our panelists, and Emily Penaskovic will kick off the discussion.
Hi, I'm Matt Benson, and this is Emily Penaskovic. And we are here from Cook Little to congratulate all of the entrepreneurs participating in the 2nd annual New Hampshire Tech Alliance Innovation Summit. As business attorneys, we are grateful for the opportunity to regularly work with New Hampshire's most creative minds and to help local entrepreneurs start and grow their businesses.
For over 20 years, Cook Little has worked with New Hampshire entrepreneurs to address a variety of business and legal matters in a practical and effective way. Connect with us to hear more about our fixed price startup package and other ways that we can help your business grow and meet its potential.
Bob Wilkins, Entrepreneur of the Year in 2020. Wow, I'm still getting used to that name. What I've been doing since last year, I'm still CEO of SoClean, which is what I got the Entrepreneur of the Year award for. Playing around with a little bit of Bitcoin again, getting back into that history of what we started back about 7 years ago, and continue to work on boards. So thank you for being here.
Hi, I'm Jody Holt. Single Digits was recognized as the Entrepreneur of the Year in 2015. Back then, we were focused on building technology to help improve guest Wi-Fi services. We busted into a lot of the largest hotel chains, Hyatt, Hilton, and Marriott. Our technology allowed guests to quickly and seamlessly get on the network and allowed owners to monetize the network and get data. We called it a frictionless experience. Today, I'm focused on co-founding Kincern. Kincern is a service that helps adult children manage their aging parents' finances and administration leveraging technology. Much like Single Digits, we are using technology to reduce the friction.
Hi, I'm Rajesh Nair. I was the Entrepreneur of the Year 20 years back in 2001 for Degree Controls. In 2017, that was actually my third company, first two failed. And the third one was Degree Controls. And after that, went for grad school. I went to MIT and started my research on training entrepreneurs. And I was a professor for 6 years. Now I'm bringing back that research to create entrepreneurs from the ground up in underserved communities across the world. Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you so much for joining us for the New Hampshire Tech Alliance's second annual Innovation Summit. This week, we're celebrating innovation here in New Hampshire, and today we're here with this wonderful group of seasoned entrepreneurs to talk about some of the unique benefits and challenges of growing and launching a business here in New Hampshire. Among the three of you, you've worked with over dozens of companies, and you have, I think, several decades of experience among the three of you. So we'd love to get your perspective on this today. So to kick things off, Bob, I want to congratulate you for being our most recently recognized Entrepreneur of the Year last year. And as we're focused on innovation here in New Hampshire, I was wondering if you could kick things off by telling us a little bit about your decision to relocate your company SoClean from Mass up here to New Hampshire and how that decision affected the company's trajectory.
It was critical. The key reason we brought it up is because we had raised a large company, PC Connection, from $230 million to $1 billion in about 4 years. And we had done it in New Hampshire between Keene, Peterborough, in the coastal area. So we knew the people, we knew what we had to work with, and to grow a company quick, you've got to pull in a really core seasoned group that has experienced rapid growth. So I had them here. It had been quite a few years, so some had moved on to other companies at that point. So it was a key part in the decision making. The second piece was the technology corridor was here. We had internet connections pretty much to the offices, the homes, and so on. And we had the ability to pull in what we felt was just a little bit better labor pool than what we were going to get out of going a little bit south. And they stick a little bit longer. We were down at Oxford, and you think that's kind of out of Boston, yet we were competing for Boston rates quite a bit in the Oxford area, and the attrition was higher. We've had very little attrition in the time we've grown SoClean over the last 3 or 4 years now. Coming into New Hampshire, that was a key benefit.
Awesome. And Jody and Raj, I know you both have made the conscious decision to grow your companies here in New Hampshire, but you've also worked with companies elsewhere. What do you see as some of the unique benefits of growing a company right here?
So I've been in New Hampshire for 34 years. So my first two companies were started here. And I love the quiet, the countryside of, that is one thing rather than going into Boston. And with all the access to everything that is available in Boston. So that's what primarily...
It's a win-win.
Oh yeah, it's a win-win, absolutely. And I still have the same house, that we started off, after grad school. So it is all absolutely an amazing place to start companies. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's a very attractive environment for people to be. People come to New Hampshire and don't really want to leave, right? You have the mountains and the oceans, the rivers, the streams, the lakes right here. A tax-free environment for most, right?
Exactly.
And just the beauty of it all. And I would say, in general, Granite Staters are really eager to help one another. And you feel that in the business environment, right?
Yeah, I was going to say that's something that we've heard a lot throughout the years is just the collaborative environment here is very different, not to knock on Silicon Valley or other ecosystems, but there's something very different when you can pick up the phone and know everyone at the Tech Alliance, for example, or chat with other entrepreneurs about things that they've been struggling with or things that have worked well, or maybe who did they talk to as a mentor that maybe could help you with certain aspects. You just don't see that on the same level in a lot of different ecosystems. Right. So I think it's something that I love to tout about New Hampshire, and it's great to hear that you've had that same experience.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah.
So Jody, you, as you mentioned in your introduction, when you were awarded or recognized as Entrepreneur of the Year in 2015, you were set CFO of Single Digits, and now you're here as a founder and CEO of Kincern, which will actually be featured tomorrow night in our startup showcase. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about how growing and launching a company is different this time around.
Wow, well, full disclosure, I didn't launch Single Digits.
I guess emphasis on the growth part of that.
I was early on and came alongside the two founders, Bob and Steve, and what a privilege to help them grow that company, here in New Hampshire. With Kincern, all the co-founders were all from New Hampshire. In fact, when we first named the company, we used our initials and 603 for New Hampshire. I think you know that, Emily, as our attorney, for our pride for New Hampshire. Yeah. So what's different right now? So that company was kind of started a little bit by the time I joined them. We're right now starting from the ground up, right? So we have this idea, and we're trying to find that product market fit, build a team, and build the software and the solution around that. And just making sure we tap into the local New Hampshire community to bring along some good talent and just keep moving things along, right? So.
Excellent. And Raj and Bob, you both have worked with several different companies. How do some of your earlier experiences affect the ventures that you're working on now? And what are some of the things that you've pulled from earlier companies?
Yeah, as I said, my first company failed, and that's where I learned a lot. And that was my tuition fee to learn how to do a company, the second one. And the third one, now I'm on the fourth company right at this point. It's like having the third child, you're kind of a lot more comfortable doing things, Yeah. And at this point, I'm on a very different mission. When you talk about entrepreneurship, think about when someone think about starting a company and on. We never think about how do you bring people to that point where they think about starting a company. And my whole research and my work right now is how do you go change mindset of children and youth, so that they believe they can start a company and bring them up to maybe increase the number of entrepreneurs by 10 to 100 times. Wow. And that could change communities and could create jobs, wealth, solve problems. So my focus primarily is on the pre-entrepreneur stage at this point. And that is my new company, EnCube Labs, which stands for Entrepreneurship Incubation Labs, basically. Yeah.
I love that. Start them young.
Start them young.
Yeah, I think it's, I got to go to COVID, because I think that has had obviously a negative impact on everybody, but there's been certainly a work dynamic that has changed. And in some ways you lose culture, you've got some issues there, but I think about SoClean has been able to tap into some executive talent that we really were not going to tap into before because we weren't willing to not have them local. Mm-hmm. And so we've done that. We've got a couple of people in Arizona, a couple of people farther south than that. It's worked. And then with one of the companies I mentioned earlier, Zifter Shop, which has been a shopping platform like Shopify, but built on blockchain. We started that 7 years ago, kind of got it there, and Bitcoin was still playing around with do people accept it or not accept it, and we put it on hold. And part of the reason we put it on hold was we really are having a tough time with the tech talent here in blockchain. And now with COVID, we're pushing that out, and people are willing to accept coming into a tech company, not feeling like they've got to be in the office with all the engineers. Right. So I think there's been a lot of dynamics like that have changed.
Yeah, excellent. So when I think about accomplished entrepreneurs, one of the critical aspects that really stands out to me is strong leadership. And so in each of your experiences, what's the most important leadership characteristic that's helped you grow your businesses?
So I could, having gone through a lot of failures, I use it. I am pretty proud of all my failures. I think one thing is you learn to look through a microscope and telescope. You look at the large vision, then you look at the operational, closer things, and you need to kind of keep switching back and forth. And you can start to gain that habit of looking at everything from 2 points of view, mm-hmm. and then of course. People are the most important parts in your company because that's the most important asset. As a CEO, they walk out in the evening. Your job is to bring them back in the morning. And that depends on how you build your culture, how you treat them, and everything else. So yes, those are the primary two things.
I'd probably add authenticity as a leader. And what I mean by that is really kind of being who you are at the core and being, as transparent as you can be in that leadership role to really build the trust of the people you are leading, right?
Yeah.
And really being a good listener.
And I think, like you said, authenticity leads to the culture, Raj, that you were explaining. If the leaders are authentic, then it leads to the whole company's culture being authentic, and that trickles down very quickly,
Absolutely.
I think. So I love that.
Yeah, I think it's listening for me is the big key. Guy gave you 2 ears and a mouth, use them a portion, and through listening, you're empowering people. You're empowering people to be creative. You're empowering people to talk, and within empowerment is empowering them to fail. So I never want somebody to not make a decision because they were afraid of it. Mm-hmm. And I tell everybody, look, 70% success rate's great. You can fail 30% of the time. They go, 30%, that's a lot. That's what we think about a baseball player. They fail 70% of the time and they're successful. So, I'm asking for quite a bit, actually, if you think about it, but it's enough to get people to take that extra step, to make that move. Because the minute, I think if you create a culture that you have to be at the center of everything to make a decision, it won't grow. You've got to empower people to make decisions and grow and feel that they have that ability to do that.
Yeah. That's a really good point, Bob. I remember at one of my prior companies, we had a staff that made a really poor decision, a mistake, a total mistake. And seconds after she did it, she brought it to our attention. And it had pretty significant impact on the company, the actual mistake. But what I loved in that moment is that as soon as she made it, her response was to come to me and tell me about it, right? Not hide from it. And that made a huge difference in resolving that issue.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, people are going to. It's just, it's part of the job. If you're going to make it happen, you're going to make decisions that are bad, and you just got to learn from them and go forward. Just like your point of failures. Yeah. The biggest successes I've had have been based on failures I've made in the past.
And to Jody's point, if your employees are scared of speaking up, then they're going to cover a lot of things that you do not get to see, and which may come back to bite you later. Right. And that is a wonderful culture to have. Stand up and say, "I've screwed up. Help me fix it, and let's all fix it together." We all have made mistakes, tons of mistakes.
Right.
I have scar tissues to show for it.
So you each have touched on this general theme of challenges and mistakes and failures. And I like that we started off on a positive note, talking about some of the great benefits about being an entrepreneur and the exciting aspects. But as it's very clear from this conversation, it's not without its challenges and its hardships. And Raj, you've touched on a few examples, but just for one example, when you were recognized as Entrepreneur of the Year in 2001 with your work for Degree Controls, that company was one of the fastest growing companies in New Hampshire.
Company in the
and I understand that not too long after that, once the recession hit, that had a pretty dramatic effect on the company.
Yes, we came this close to bankruptcy.
Which is
we were about 4 hours from bankruptcy. And finally we managed to get new funding and we started the company again. And in 2008, there was another, at least it didn't go that far down. So you learn resilience. You start to see ahead, prepare for it and plan for it, and when you see opportunities in chaos. And as an entrepreneur, your job is to look for opportunities in, anywhere. And also, dodge bullets, capture opportunities. They both are coming back and forth, and you don't know which is which.
Yeah.
And having that dexterity in moving is absolutely important. Yeah.
And Bob and Jody, could you talk a little bit about some of an example of a challenge that you've faced, and any words of advice for entrepreneurs that inevitably are going to come along a similar challenge? For some that may be coming out of the pandemic, I'm sure that uprooted a lot of companies' plans and forced them to pivot. But I guess what's some words of advice that coming out of a big challenge that end up being a kind of unique benefit in the when you look back on it? I'm sure not at the moment.
I would say with the prior company, that challenge of the layoff, right? In order for the company to survive. And that is really hard. You've brought along some really good people.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then you've got to deliver that news. And then you've got also employees that are losing their friends as well. And that's a really hard thing to do and go through. But in these cases, without those layoffs, there wouldn't be the company that is still existing today, right? To pivot quickly, make those cuts that are so hard, get the team back on the same page again, move forward, and sometimes you're able to rehire those folks later. But
yeah, we had to go from 120 down to 30 people in a matter of a few weeks in 2003.
Wow.
My goodness.
And it was hard. They're all my friends, and it was your first thing. They're all our friends that we became friends. Second is you're actually putting a whole family under stress.
Yeah.
And kind of I was responsible. Of course I can't do much, but I took personal responsibility. So turn around, and when things turned around, you bring them back.
Right.
And they were happy to come back, actually. So.
Yeah, I think the layoffs are definitely always tough, and we've all gone through them over our careers. I mean, it's almost unavoidable at some point, especially if you've got a high growth company. I think to advise to an entrepreneur is, look, you're going to hit it. Don't kick yourself. Get up in the morning. Certainly look back and say, well, if I could have done it different, what would I have? But don't kick yourself about it. Learn from it. And then what am I going to do going forward? And what am I going to tackle? What problem do I have to solve to get through it? I'm a big space fan. I love The Martian. And I love The Martian because the line he says at the end is, look, you just got to wake up every morning. You got to figure out, what do I have to get done today, and move the ball forward. Yeah. And you can't always see what you have to do to get to the end. Yeah. You've got to get over here, but you don't know all the steps. But each day, if you figure it out, you'll get there eventually. And try to have glasses half full, not half empty. Most of my finance guys are always half empty. Right? So you were the one of the few, Jody, I think is an exception to that. It sounds like so.
Well, that's an interesting, are entrepreneurs optimists or pessimists? Is it half empty or half full? I think they are realists. How do you like it?
Yeah.
Do you like it full? I'll charge you $1, fill it back up, okay? Do you want it empty? I'll charge you extra for discarding it. So entrepreneurs need to look at things as is and where it could be. And that's the opportunity gap that entrepreneurs work in. So, yeah.
I like that. That's good.
Well, that asset-based thinking, right?
Yeah.
Trying to think of what can we do when we feel like there's nothing we can do? What can we do?
Yeah, and not being the doer, right? I think if you're a CEO, especially if you've been an entrepreneur that's grown a big company, you were the guy doing it all the time, or the person doing it all the time. And then eventually you get the company's grown, you've brought in the right people to do it, and now the big problems happened. Don't think you've got to go back and be the doer. You've got to be the problem solver, bring your people in to help solve the problem, figure it out, guide, lead them through it.
Right. So Bob, about 10 years ago, you had to really reinvent your company. If I get this correctly, you were in the business of repairing scratches on DVDs and CDs, which I can imagine you saw the writing on the wall, and you knew that technological innovation was going to render that instinct, which it did. And just last year, you expanded SoClean's product line in response to the pandemic. What advice do you have for entrepreneurs about seizing opportunity and being on the cutting edge and not being afraid to pivot, even though no one else may be doing it quite yet?
Yeah, so that company was Venmill Industries, and I was on the board at the time, and they were doing the scratches. They cleaned scratches off DVDs and CDs, and the machines they sold were industrial machines that went to the Blockbusters of the world, so the rental places.
Remember Blockbuster?
Yeah, before streaming video, right? And so now you can't get a Blu-ray. But so we saw the writing on the wall. It was a $5 million revenue company, barely break even. And literally what we saw in the company was 35 people, perfect startup company. It had engineers, it had customer service, it had sales, it had a warehouse, and a perfect incubator takes a lot of time to put together. So we literally went down to the employees and told them they probably had a year before they were out of business, and they needed to come up with a new answer. And so I'd go down every couple of weeks, meet with the president, look at the potential thoughts they had. Either the market was too small, or the market was too crowded, or too much money to get into it. And I walked in 6 months into it, and they said, we know how to clean CPAP machines. And I said, what's a CPAP machine? I had no clue. And then we did the background on the market, how big it was, what the growth was. And before we came along, the only way to clean a CPAP was soap and water. and you really weren't cleaning it. You were washing it. You weren't disinfecting it. So you had a need that needed to happen. We had a way to solve the problem. It still took 4 years to figure out how to sell the product and get the growth out of it. But there's a good example. Go to the employees, empower the employees to come up with the right answer. On the flip side of that, through COVID, we saw not the opportunity, but the need or the problem. We did the Master New Hampshire thing where we donated millions of masks. But we took one of our devices that used ozone and changed it to be a device disinfector, thinking that, we didn't know at that point touch and all those types of things about how it spread. And UV does not work if you have a real UV piece. And so we rapidly brought that product to market, got very zealous about what we thought the potential was for it. So 5 months from start to product is shipping and in the market.
That's incredible.
And it was a disaster. It was a total disaster. It was, nobody got it. Nobody really wanted to put their phone and lock it up for 5 minutes. Imagine not having your phone for 5 minutes. Oh my God. But that's what you had to do. You had to put it in there for 5 minutes to lose it. And keys and all the types of things that happen. So there was a good example. We tried real hard, brought some ideas in, and I think you can find one of those at, what's the warehouses, like?
BJ's Wholesale?
Yeah, something like that for like $99 now. It's out in the market, so we end up getting rid of them.
Pivoting is a very interesting point because last year and a half, or maybe almost 2 years now, during COVID, we have had disruption all across the supply chain. Your customers have got disrupted, your products and market is disrupted. On the other side, your suppliers and your own operation got disrupted. Now, what's an entrepreneur to do when these things are getting disrupted on both sides, or either one or the other? When you get your market disrupted, when you still have your supply chain, you make a different product with the same thing. When you have your supply chain disrupted, you have to completely change your business model. So both pivoting has to happen. And I've seen many cases, they both got to. And this was like a once-in-a-lifetime natural experiment that's happening. And so we are actually doing a research project with multiple universities in 5 countries to see how entrepreneurs stay resilient during this step function change that we saw in March of 2020. And everything just got messed up. So it's an amazing, interesting interviews that we have been having. So to your point, people have completely changed their business. They're not doing what they thought they were doing anymore.
Yeah. There aren't too many situations, too, where everybody is forced to pivot at the exact same time.
Exactly.
Like,
never happens.
It's hard to know. Yeah,
So even during market crash in 2003 or whatever, it was regional. It was in the US and some other places, but never global. And all at the same time. Never happened. So this is a natural experiment. So
it's a good restart button, I guess.
Yeah, it is a restart button.
Sure.
Well, we started off the conversation by talking about some of the unique benefits of launching companies here and why New Hampshire is a special spot. And so I guess to wrap things up, how do we get the word out about that? How do we grow the ecosystem here and make sure that others know? A few of you have mentioned that once people come to New Hampshire, they stay. The attrition rate's amazing. People love it here. It's such a great place to be, and not just to work remotely, into a company here, which is also a great option now, but to really be here and live and work in this community is really, really special. So I guess the question is, how do we grow this ecosystem and spread that word that people should launch their companies here or join startups that are growing here?
So ecosystem, primarily, you can look at from top down and bottom up. Mostly when you talk about entrepreneurship ecosystems, we think about glass buildings and programs and funding and everything else that come from the top. That doesn't change the mindset of children who are growing up to become entrepreneurs. Okay, so in the oil and gas parlance, we are only working in downstream. We're not looking upstream. How do we find tomorrow's entrepreneurs, train them like professional sports do? How do you bring them to the point where you can change the ecosystem from bottom up?
Yeah.
And if you can do that in New Hampshire, starting with schools, universities, community colleges, as well as in communities itself, start to change that, this could completely blow up to become an entrepreneurship capital a beehive of the country. But you need to kind of think about it from a system point of view and bring it up from the bottom up.
I totally, good segue, Raj. At Kincern, we hired a couple UNH, University of New Hampshire, students to be interns, right? And just for them to see and to mentor young minds to see that you could do this too. You could start a company here in New Hampshire. I think we have a responsibility to reach out and mentor to the young folks that are in our midst and let them see what they can do here.
As a UNH alum, I love hearing that.
Somehow we've got to promote more of the companies that have come out of New Hampshire, right? How many people remember EMS came out of here, or Brookstone came out of here? There are a lot of successful companies, dating back over 4, 5, 6 decades that have come out of here. I think letting people know there is access to capital. I think we have a really good angel network here, second-tier angel network on top of that. We've got a finite, venture capital group here. Borealis is here, obviously, but getting more access to that, letting people know. And then I still don't think we're there yet on the East Coast versus West Coast mentality of growth versus EAPS, right? So we're still, I think, stuck into, is the company profitable yet to invest versus West Coast is willing to say, what's the growth that's going to be there and what's the value down the road, I'll invest in that. I think that's the hardest time I've ever had raising capital is when I'm in a growth mode. Go west, young man.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to go west. I want to stay here. So how do we kind of bring some of that more to bear?
Exactly. 9 out of 10 startups fail. And not because the startup itself business was bad. It is because the entrepreneur's learning on the job. He's just learning to walk at that point. And obviously they make, I was one of them, and paid the tuition fee for it. But we can't expect companies to be successful in the first shot. I would say companies fail, entrepreneurs don't fail. Entrepreneurs learn. Projects fail. But if we look at the entrepreneur and say you cannot do another one because you failed, you have actually changed the culture of entrepreneurship. In West Coast, I think you have a lot more encouraging, inspiring crowd that lets you fail and pulls you back up. And as you said, if you want to show profitability right from the beginning, then you're not actually building up entrepreneurship from the bottom up.
No.
That could be changed. That has to be changed.
Well, thank you all for sharing your experiences with us, your failures and your learning experiences, more importantly. And we hope that everyone will join us tomorrow night for our Startup Showcase and the rest of the Innovation Summit.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Emily.